What exactly is a Force Dyad? And how powerful can two people who share this bond become? The Rise of Skywalker introduced us to a lot of new Force abilities while putting the power and potential of Rey and Ben on full display. But the most intriguing new concept with the Force itself is this idea of a Force Dyad, which allows our two main characters to perform stunts together that even the most wise and powerful Force users cannot do on their own. So I want to discuss what a Force Dyad really is, and evaluate the power of Rey and Ben Solo as one person, rather than as individuals. I mean, it's only right that we look at things this way, because at the end of the day, that is their true form. We cannot fully evaluate the power of either character until we view them as one and the same. From what we can tell, a dyad is not something that can simply be created at the will of two Force users, but rather only by the Force itself. One of the reasons the Sith Rule of Two was created was so that perhaps one day, a master and an apprentice could unlock the secret to manifesting such a bond between each other. And so far in canon, they have never achieved this. In Episode 9, when Darth Sidious realizes the dyad between Rey and Ben exists, he states that this sort of link between two people has not been seen in generations. He reveals that it's a power like life itself, as we then see the life force literally finish the regeneration of the Emperor's body, fully restoring him to his true form. Their bond also allows Ben and Rey to communicate and even physically interact with each other from light years away. In The Last Jedi, we see Luke Skywalker project himself across the galaxy as his last attempt to save the Resistance from what was otherwise going to be a decisive end to their existence. This takes everything Luke has, as the effort literally drains his body, resulting in his death, or at least his transition from the real world to the spiritual realm. But Kylo and Rey do this many times with each other and suffer absolutely no physical damage. Granted, they are the only ones who can see one another, while Luke was able to fool everyone around him, including droids. But the fact that they're able to execute any version of this power and do so with no physical exertion is something that we have never seen before. In fact, they even take it a step further by physically interacting with each other and their surroundings. They can transfer objects to one another, which can come in handy when one of them may be in need of something like, I don't know, a lightsaber. It's not clear if one half of this life force can exist without the other, but it seems like maybe they can based on what we saw in Episode 9. But I would contend that the more likely explanation is one of two things. Either the life force of their bond actually saved Ben Solo, and he is out there somewhere, or, when he revives Rey, that symbolized him transferring his half of the bond to her, meaning he now lives in Rey until her death reunites them in the Netherworld. But the visual dictionary states that a dyad connects two individuals across space and time. We have seen this demonstrated through space, but not through time as of yet. So I think Ben Solo's potential and his ability to return are more likely than most people realize. And if that's true, it would add to the power of the dyad even more, as it means that both individuals have to be killed in unison for either of them to be truly eliminated. But we'll just assume that's not the case right now and continue to look at the strength of this bond while they were both alive. We actually began to get hints of this bond in The Force Awakens when Kylo was interrogating Rey in his chambers. In that scene, Kylo claims he can take whatever he wants from Rey's mind, just as we saw him do to Poe earlier in the movie. So like Luke did to him on the night of his turn to the dark side, Kylo Ren takes a look inside Rey's mind. He sifts through her feelings and her memories of her childhood in pursuit of the map that leads to Luke Skywalker. He relentlessly pushes through her best efforts to deny him, describing her dreams and lecturing her on Han Solo. But then something unexpected happens. The novelization of The Force Awakens describes the interaction like this. He thought to himself, something there of interest, not the image of the map, that would take another moment, but definitely something worth investigating. He shifted his perception toward it, seeking to identify, to analyze, to... The barrier he encountered stopped him cold, and it was he, Kylo Ren, who blinked. It made no sense. The depiction of this struggle continues, and then explains how Rey manages to enter his head, and we know what happens from there. After their interaction ends and Rey breaks out of her cell, she remains in tune with Kylo's mind. She can't see everything, but it's described as one door after another swinging open, allowing her to access many of Ren's abilities. Perhaps that's why in the movie Kylo states, the longer it takes to find her, the more dangerous she becomes. It's pretty likely that he knows she has seen more than just his fear of not filling his grandfather's shoes. We don't know if this is when the bond was initiated or not. For all we know, it could have existed from the time Rey was born. It may not have been fully unleashed until the hut scene in The Last Jedi, but this is a clear indication that a bond beyond what average Force users can achieve exists between these two, and it definitely explains why Rey is able to grow so powerful so quickly. Early in Episode 8, we see the dyad strengthen to the point where they can interact with each other across space, and it continues to expand until finally they can touch each other. Then in The Rise of Skywalker, it is taken to the highest level we have seen to this point. It's said that, at least in the case of Rey and Ben, the Dyad and its capabilities continue to grow over time, so considering that the sequel trilogy only covers a span of a little over a year, we've really only scratched the surface of how powerful these two could have become together. I wonder what limitations there really are for this kind of power if it's allowed to progress over a longer period. Especially since the visual dictionary said that they're able to interact across time. What does that really mean? Perhaps we'll get to see more in the future. Maybe as their connection continues to grow with Ben inside of Rey now, they will eventually learn of a way to bring him back. Maybe through the world between worlds, maybe through something else we have never seen before. Either way, I think it's safe to say that the strength of Ben and Rey's dyad makes them significantly more powerful than they are when they operate alone. It allows them to perform things that actually require two people, so no singular force wielder could ever achieve such a power no matter how great their abilities were. I would say that if we consider them to be one person, this character would be one of, if not the most powerful force user we have ever seen. But because their run together was so short-lived, I think I would still put Emperor Palpatine above them. I really can't get around the fact that this guy simply refuses to die. Outside of him though, I think everyone else is up for debate. And I also think that if they had continued to progress, they would have certainly outpaced the Emperor as time went on. Maybe they'll get this chance down the road, maybe they won't. And I mean, who knows? We may even get to see another Force dyad in the movies coming out in the 2020s. Palpatine did say that such a bond had not been seen in generations, which confirms that it had been seen at some point in time before. I think that would be pretty cool to see because we may get to witness some new abilities by a dyad which existed for a much longer time than what we see in The Rise of Skywalker. But then again, maybe the amount of time wouldn't necessarily matter because it's unlikely that those two characters would be as strong as Rey and Ben both were as individuals. We can't just throw the strength of each person by themselves out the window when considering the dyad either. The fact that Ben and Rey both wield such a great deal of power is part of what makes my evaluation of them as one so menacing for their opponents. But how do you guys feel about this topic? How strong do you think a Force dyad can become, and how strong do you think the only one we've seen thus far is? Do you think we'll ever get to see another one? Leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and may the Force be with you, always.